I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me.
I had an interesting experience. I was driving with Lynn Wyatt, my director of traffic safety, to the site we were going to look. And as we were driving down, she kept saying, well, isn't that a wonderful sign? And I kept saying, but look at that building. And so it seems to me that maybe we're divided into people who see signs and people who see buildings.
Yeah, you're right.
But you're right that somehow we need to control the architectural quality as well as the placements.
Yes.
As a first step before we change.
Yeah, architecture, I mean, usually what we go for, architectural style, seems almost to become last.
Right.
It's usually the size of the sign, the placement of the sign. Sometimes, and this is more planners than it is law department,
Yeah.
the sign is made out of, and the design of the sign would be more a planning
Well,
function
let
than it
me
is
ask
a
you
law
perhaps
department.
a more profound question. Robert Venturi was an architect who's famous for studying strip architecture and learning from it and using it in his buildings. He did a studio took an architecture studio before I came to him, went to Las Vegas, and wrote a definitive book saying Learning from Las Vegas. Do you feel that there's anything that we can learn from strip architecture to improve the quality of our planning in Brookhaven? Or is it a component that we really just have to approach in a different fashion?
I would say, going back to some people see signs, and when I think of Las Vegas, I think, I've never been there, to tell you the truth, but when I think of Las Vegas, thinking of a large amount of flashing lights,
Right.
Almost like a Times Square type.
It's a very vibrant environment.
Absolutely,
And
it is.
I'll refer to Times Square. I think Times Square is a very vibrant environment. In its place, in the middle of Manhattan, I think that's appropriate. Country Road or along the Montauk Highway or Route 112. So certainly I think, the design of signs and what they have done in other places like Las Vegas or Times Square, I certainly we can learn lessons from it. But I think we can't extract those lessons, the type of things they did in Manhattan and Las Vegas, and put them on Country Road.
Yeah, Gail made an interesting point about how the buildings, when the sign got removed from the buildings, it lost that quality. So that you weren't seeing buildings, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, sure, you're not, you're just seeing the signs.
Yeah.
And really, the problem was because of that asphalt sea
Yeah.
between the building
So it was
and
a
the
foreground that was oppressive.
Sure, you couldn't, and people were, and then they really were just lined up along Middle Country Road with literally those flashing yellow light bulbs.
And-
Shop here, and the changeable letters.
And that's probably
There was no character involved there.
the problem of which came first, the chicken or the egg, and I think it was the large expanse of asphalt preventing customers from seeing the store
Right.
itself.
Well,
So then they have attention to their store by having a larger.
Business owners are convinced
Yeah.
that if they could just flag them in from the road. That's
Yeah.
why you see these feathers and
Well,
these,
Yeah,
As
which
you
are
know-
illegal.
And the people's, the liberty tax person I pass all the time,
As you know now,
It's a human sign,
we're
Julio.
changing the model so that buildings.
I like those.
Yeah.
Buildings are no longer, at least in some of our designs, set back from the road. They're actually on the road,
Right.
in front of the road.
Yeah,
And so that the signs get de-emphasized by the very nature of being on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to
But
see.
you're correct that sometimes you feel like you're walking into a kindergarten with a lot of screaming kids,
Yeah.
and there's signs
Yeah.
and signs in front
Yeah.
of them.
I mean, some of the signs that Gail is referring to, the feather signs and those waving little men and whatever, those were illegal
Right.
under the code before it was amended. The problem that our law department was having is that we had so many conflicts within the code that it was difficult to enforce.
Right.
So now we've cleaned up
And
those conflicts.
how are we going to communicate that to business owners without threatening them or,
We-
we don't want
Yeah.
people to feel that
No.
this is supposed to be an improvement for everybody.
Absolutely.
It's very important that they understand that that's the goal of
Yeah.
this legislation.
One of the things that my office has done is created a small paragraph for the law department to use to give out to business owners that have signs that are illegal, telling them, what the code states and what rights they have and what the amortization period is and that kind of thing. So it's important to communicate open dialogue with the business owners. We don't want to hurt our business owners.
I think in planning here, we have shaped a lot of the designs to have much better site planning associated with much better architecture. So approaching the
Yeah.
problem in multiple ways.
I mean, one of the things that the code requires is, and required before it was amended, is that when somebody comes in for a site plan, that on their site plan is a signage plan.
Right.
And so the signage plan says, you know, how many signs you're going to have, what the placements are, the signs are. If it's a corner property, you can have, you know, so many signs. So we do have that currently,
Right.
which is a help.
Yeah, I think anything that we can do to allay fears. You know, change is hard.
Absolutely.
It's always difficult. And this is the intention of this is to improve things as well as promote business.
That's right.
And,
Yes.
and that's really important to get across to everybody. And I wouldn't want to see us lose some of the interesting, like you said, you like the person waving on. It's great to see a person now and then,
Well,
isn't
the
it?
diners,
You know?
diners are the greatest.
Yeah, they're great. There's a place for neon. There's a place for
absolutely.
retro. There's a
Yes.
place for, you know, think of the pizzeria in Middle Island with its wonderful slanted
Yeah.
roof and a sign that goes
Yes.
with that. And they've redone their display inside with neon.
Well, do you
But it's
know-
low key, and maybe it's not neon. Maybe it's
that's
something
the-
more
that can
environmental
be-
friendly. But it looks great.
And it's
you know?
wonderful
Really
creativity.
looks
Much
great.
has been written about the Flanders duck in architectural
Oh, yes,
journals
yes.
all over.
And that's a
Absolutely.
sign. The
Absolutely.
building.
The building
Yeah.
is the sign.
Yes, the building is the sign.
Building's the sign. And even driving down to Flanders, I remember years ago going past the deli with the old Briars. You know, little things that advertised products evoke that old nostalgic feeling. The Briars, Wise potato chips, those little things that really
Yeah.
weren't out of place because they were small and you got used to them because they were attached to the building. They weren't
Yeah.
out flashing.
No, actually, the
scaring
large
you.
signs of the 50s and 60s grew out of the pop art movement, coupled with, as I mentioned, the branding of commercial branding. It's a natural fit for them. And the other thing I bemoan is the fact that as an automobile culture, that we just kind of let that go rampant
Yes,
and out of
yeah.
control.
We've
for
all
such
had
a
that
long
experience
period
of driving on the interstate and seeing these signs almost as if they were out in space.
Yes.
Hovering, you know, on these tall stanchions, and you think,
Right.
what? I thought I was looking at a farm. It's, you know, Motel 6.
Yes.
They're leaving the light
Yes,
on for you,
yes.
and it's lit, really
Yes,
good.
yes.
Yeah, there are some corridors in the town of Brookhaven that are, you know, literally littered with signs. Thinking of particular ones, you know, certainly Montauk Highway in some areas are like that, Route 112. And those areas really could use a overall signage plan. And that would help not only the aesthetics of the area, but also the businesses.
Right.
Because there's just too many competing signs. I really don't think that helps business at all. I think it detracts from it. So, yeah, that's the whole purpose of the ordinance.
Do you really believe that people are so stupid that they will not need more than one simple time to go to a building to realize that that same hamburger?
And many places, and I used to live out west, they had very small signs for very large malls. And somehow people always found their way to the supermarket.
Right.
So you don't really need that, you know, big giant sign.
And you know, on top of that, when you think about now technology of how we're accessing where to go, you know, people are looking at a very small device in their hand.
That's
Tell
right.
them,
Yes.
it's here, it's there, it's the other thing, and they are being directed
Or the
then within
GPS in
their
the
car
car. Yeah.
to go there. So
Yeah.
they don't need all
That's
these
right.
screaming things
Look,
directed
I've
at them
always
anymore.
believed that commercial strip corridors are done. They are changing over, as I mentioned, to mixed use. But more importantly than that, as a culture, we're buying off the internet. We're doing so many other things that is making that model fail. And along with that environment, hopefully the proliferation of signs will disappear as well. That's my hope for this next year.
Yeah, and that will be replaced with, as you say, with a more mixed use,
Pedestrian
pedestrian oriented.
friendly.
Where you-
Whoa!